Alright, so I should be live, and I don't see that anybody's online, which is expected since I'm completely new, but I do have a few things that I wanted to go through. Alright, so this stream is going to be about CIA/NA, so confidentiality, integrity, availability, non-repudiation, and authentication. And we're going to do it, well, actually going to talk about risk as well. I'm going to talk about security controls as well. And we're going to do it in a way that essentially will give a practical breakdown of these things using some sort of hacking technique or something. It's going to be very simple, but we're going to also install stuff. So let me just get right into it. So first, I want to get into AWS. I probably should have gotten ready with all of this, but I'm gonna have to just bear with me for a little while. All right. You'll notice that in AWS we have a console, and you have to create users ideally so that you're not logging in with the root password or whatever. All right. So what we basically are going to have is a web server that we're going to install and basically practice on to do these hacks, right? So I'm going to start this. Actually, okay, yeah, I already started this one up, but I'm going to start another one so that we can basically do it from scratch. So I did some quick testing. Okay. So while this is starting and everything, I talked about CIA as confidentiality, integrity, etc. It is exactly how it sounds. Confidentiality is, whether you want to allow people to see that data or not, right? So if something's confidential, you're going to protect it with a password, you're going to have it encrypted, etc. It's very similar with integrity, except it's just about not allowing people to change that data, right? If you have a bank account, you don't want somebody to arbitrarily change the amount of money in it, right? Stuff like that. So integrity is just about changing. Availability, of course, is what it sounds like, is being able to access whatever it is that you need. Now, personally, I don't quite agree with the whole non-repudiation and authentication as being separate, because when you apply controls to be confidential, well, then you have to have some sort of authentication. Usually you have to have some sort of protection. I guess you don't have to, so maybe that's why they separated it out. Similarly with non-repudiation, if you have a method of authentication, generally there's going to be also a small level of non-repudiation as well. A lot of times they treat it as a definite, and unfortunately that's just not true. What non-repudiation says is you want to prove that you are the one who did something, or whoever is the one who actually did whatever it is they did. So when you're sending an email, non-repudiation means you can prove that the sender actually sent that email. Now, obviously, it's all over the wires, right? So when you say prove, just because it's using my user account doesn't mean I'm the one who actually sent it, right? So non-repudiation is really tied to the accounts, and so you can prove that the account did it. You just can't prove who used that account. So it's a little bit of a trick there that even though it's obvious, it's something that we might forget every now and then, that, hey, just because it's non-repudiable doesn't mean that we know exactly who did it. We just know what system account or digital entity started something. And so we're gonna do a quick, easy hack to kind of see a few of these aspects. So first, if you guys actually started an AWS account, then you guys can create a server and go through this stuff. If you haven't yet, obviously just do it on your own time after you go through this. But alright, so what we're gonna do here is first log in to our server, and previously, let's see, connect, SSH client. So something I wanted to go through real quick, because this kind of reminded me, is when, we've arbitrarily created all of these we've created an arbitrary server on the last episode. I didn't talk about security at all, and because we're going to have to go harden all of these things and basically lock this stuff down at some point later. I'm going to go through all of that, but just so you know now, beforehand, is there are definitely things that you kind of have to keep in mind. For example, this first thing is like the firewalls. You should definitely always have some sort of generic firewall on everything. So, I showed my IP there. When you basically have a security group, you're basically blocking only to your particular device. And so what we should always do is, if it's just a test network, you can just create a security group that is associated only to your particular host. So for example, I'll just change my IP after this. But as you can see, for example, I created a block stuff security group that is only allowing inbound traffic from my IP address. So when I basically, if anybody else tries to get into the server, they just can't. It's already going to be blocked. And then outbound, I have it to everything now. I'm going to get into that at some point as well. Having outbound allow all is also not a good thing, but at the very least, people can't get in. But if they happen to get in, or if you install your own software that somehow is jacked up, again, which will show, then outbound being allowed to go anywhere also is bad. So that's where a whole host of different networking things come into play. So that's one thing, is you gotta have security groups. Be smart about that. Where you put your keys, be smart about that. And then some of the defaults with the instances, you just want to know a little bit about them. So for example, this instance doesn't have a public IP address, so I have to assign it a public IP address. I don't remember why that's the case, but it's whatever. I can just attach the device. I think, I don't remember. I honestly don't remember how to do that. That's embarrassing. Alright, let's see. Is it in a different subnet? 729. Okay, so let's see here. Let's just do this for now. So an elastic IP address is a dedicated IP address that you can assign to your systems. Let's see, which instance am I? 72 or 94. This is where I should probably put names and tags and stuff on the systems. Actually, let me go ahead and do that. That's test. I'll do test 1, test 2. Alright, so 94 is our deal. And I'm going to go ahead and allocate this to... Oops, what happened? Test 2, associate. Alright, so now if we go back to our instance, we should see the public IP address here. If we didn't set that up, we would only be able to get to it from within the network. So we can connect now to our system. Okay, so the first thing I want to install is basically like a web server. I want to, so if you guys have gone through any sort of stand up your own web server, host your own web server stuff, basically we're going to go through that in a very quick fashion, hopefully. So let's just go ahead and install WordPress and curl and a database. I'm going to be following basically, a, I'm going to be following basically let's just say ambient install WordPress. So if you guys want to follow along, essentially, when it comes to this stuff, there's going to be 1,000,001 tutorials. So the point of me doing this stuff isn't to just go through tutorials as we've gone, but it's to just kind of show how quickly we can do things, but also keeping in mind that when you're doing these tutorials, there's a lot of little nuances that can easily get confusing, and in doing so, it's just stuff that you have to go through and practice, and this is kind of why I want to do it. Just go through, practice, keep doing these things, even though this has all of the answers and you just kind of go through and do it. It still needs doing, and it goes back to what I was hoping I meant to talk about is our rules. Do it. You got to do it. No, don't just watch. So anyway, so let's see. All right, we got our thing updated. Can't MariaDB. Why can't you find MariaDB? Let's just install these for now, and then while that's going, I'll search for MariaDB. Yeah. MariaDB server. Yeah, I'm not sure why. Oh, yeah, MariaDB server. Okay, anyway. Okay, so while that's going, I talked about CIA and I also was going to talk about risk, because it's a huge portion of, obviously, cybersecurity. It's all about risk, which goes back to the rules, right? If MariaDB server, when you think about risk, we're going to be talking about vulnerabilities or weaknesses in your system or your architecture. And along with those vulnerabilities are going to be potential ways to exploit them, and then there's going to be some sort of impact or severity that goes along with that. So, and then taking those things into consideration, you get your overall risk, right? So when we go through one of these little hacks, it'll kind of get your gears turning about, okay, here's the weakness, here's the threat, here's the vulnerability. I mean, not the vulnerability, the impact if that threat were to be exploited or to be actualized, and then what is the general risk because of it. Well, impact and then your risk. Okay, so let's see. So first thing they want us to do is secure the database. Some of this. Sure, to remove login remotely. Yep. Remove test database. Reload privileged tables. Alright. So that's just like a script that kind of sets up your database, does some basic security stuff. When it comes to Linux and enabling your web server, there's different ways. I think Debian is completely different than like Red Hat and some of the other ones, but basically we have to create a connector, if you will, for the web server. And that's basically general information that the web server needs to say, yes, this is how you want to conduct business. So for example, server name is where we would name our server and whatever it is. Like if I wanted to, I could say, okay, my server at cyberspec.net or whatever, have emails sent to a particular thing. Document root is where on our system all of the web files are going to be stored and where it's going to read from. And then when you get into all of this other stuff, it's going to be where is this particular site's information and what basic rules do you want it to follow. This is going to get into a whole bunch of different stuff with web servers. We're not going to go there yet, but this right here is basically saying, hey, this is going to be a HTTP web server, not TTPS, and we're going to get into, obviously, you already should know why that matters, but we'll kind of go into that as well. I'm literally not going to do much of anything here. I'm just going to kind of keep the defaults for now and call it a day, just so that we can kind of get through this. Alright, so we have our WordPress default. This is having us disable what is the default web server currently. Right now I want to say it was just like a blank page. In fact, maybe whatever, I already disabled it. I could go to it, but Insight WordPress. Alright, and then oops. Okay. Alright, so reloaded the web server, and now it wants us to create the basic landing page for, let's see. This is basic WordPress PHP file. So basically, every web software is different, but in WordPress, basically, it's going to define your information up front. It's so that you can log into it. The basic server can log into it from these. I don't know why this is like this. Don't know how to better explain that aside from basically when this gets run, it's going to log into the database. And so whatever I set up as the database information, it will use this to do its connections. Obviously, this would be you would change these under normal conditions, and you would make them more secure and all that. But again, we're going to go through securing things later down the road. This is just for informational purposes. Alright. I don't know why these little numbers are in here. For anybody who is not a PHP person, that could probably be confusing. Alright. And then it wants us to basically create a Sql file. And that Sql file is basically to create this blank default database that we just identified as needing to connect to. So, as you can see, create database, you're going to grant some permissions on it, on that particular instance, by this user with that password, and clear privileges. Alright. Then we go ahead and run that. So this probably will. So I'm doing this because this probably won't work, but let's go ahead and try it. Yeah, so that Sql default file is protected, so I can't do it without sudo, but sudo also doesn't work well when you're piping through different things. So this is one command, copy, and then this is the second command into MySQL, right? Because of that, if I do sudo copy, it still won't work because I'm sudoing or elevating this part, but not elevating that part. So anyway, so what I'll do is, I don't know MySQL commands very well, but there's probably going to be a run file or something like that. Where, let me just Google it. So this is where, hey, we're live. Let's see, MySQL command line, run SQL. Let's just do that. MySQL. Oh, that little doohickey. Okay. I can do MySQL, all that stuff, and then that little doohickey, WordPress, and SQL. Alright, now our database should be created, and which means that literally right now, we should be good to go. Let's see. Alright, so if you want to check to see what ports are listening, you can do SS, and then I can grep for port 80. Oops. I could. Okay. Oh, oops. Not too crashes. Alright, yes, so our web server is listening. Before we do anything, sometimes what I like to do is just test, is it listening, or can we get to it? So for example, if I do wget localhost, that should have came up with something. However, if you guys saw earlier, essentially we have a server name of this. So it's looking for that when we do make our request. So to fix that, we'd have to make it to that. Now, I've already changed my host file, or actually, no, I haven't. Let's go ahead and API center hosts, and we're going to add in here example, actually, myblog.example.com. So now if I do ping myblog.example.com, should come up with myself, right? Which is localhost. So let's go ahead and now do that. Alright, so as you can see, we got an index, which means it was successful. So what I can do now is, here actually, let me make sure that my test 1 is stopped, because I don't want to accidentally connect to that guy. Okay. Alright. So now what I could do is go to so right now, obviously, this is logged into that server, right? I need to have another one that is just for out here. So I've already set up the test on this one, but when I tested it, so hosts, I put my blog example as this old test IP. So now that I have a different IP, I need to change it to this guy. So, alright. So there. So now I'm pointing myblog.example.com to this new test server too. So if I go to my blog example, we have our new WordPress site that we literally just created. Hack me site, and we'll just say cyberspec, and then password will be password find me. How about that? Confirm use of weak password, and this doesn't really matter, but blog@example.com. Install WordPress. Alright, so right now we have our site. Now, obviously, this is something that everybody should know at this stage, so of course you wouldn't, if you ever come into a website like this, you would never log into it because, you know, your stuff can be seen. So let's go ahead and just show that real quick, just for those who haven't done this before. Again, this is for the newbies, not for people who have already know about all this stuff. Oh shoot. So I'm going to use Wireshark, and I'm running it as root because to enable these ability to see all of the instances or the interfaces. Alright, so I'm going to run that, and it's capturing data. Now if I type in my password, what was it, find me, and then go and stop this, literally that's simple. Hack 1 is, where are we at here? Post. So if we go to the login post, we can literally see right here our password, find me. So anyone on the network who is capturing packets can ultimately see this information and obviously use it if they want to. So if you're at wherever you, like a cafe, Starbucks or Panera or whatever, and for whatever reason there's a unsecure login that you end up using, one of those random people could literally pick it up. So that obviously is going to compromise your confidentiality. And then if someone uses that to log into whatever you're doing, they can change things, so integrity, and they can shut down things, availability, right? And of course, this is by default authentication. And then the non-repudiation aspect, while you can't, only this cyberspec user could log in, so that is still non-repudiation, but it's who is it that's logging in? And that's why I find that the non-repudiation thing, we have to be very careful with it. Just remember that it doesn't matter who, the actual person who did it isn't necessarily who we're non-repudiating, and usually isn't. Anyway, so that's our first super basic hack one. The next one we're going to do is going to be a little more fun, because I'm going to try and show something that a lot of people just don't normally know. So if we go to exploit DB, which I already have it there, but you can literally just search this, Google it. This is where a lot of exploits are pretty much posted for the community, and I love it. I think that it's a good thing. It's good for hackers, which is quote bad, but it's what everyone tries to do is they put not everyone, but mostly the community is trying to put this stuff out there and before to the people who are actually owners of the software and stuff like that, and they give them time to fix the vulnerability before it gets released. But the problem is, if you don't do this, well then all of the people who are malicious are going to have this information anyway, because they're doing their own vulnerability research and stuff like that. Whereas if it's all open, at least everybody can see, hey, don't use this particular thing, or make sure it's patched, or take that in consideration. We need that to stay open, or else we won't all know what things are out there, what bad things could be when we use a particular software. So what we can do, so if, for example, obviously we're doing this to hack our own site, but if we didn't necessarily know this and we were just using stuff, it would be these things all tied to what they call CVEs, and it's another open effort to capture vulnerabilities and make it public so everybody knows what to patch. So I'm going to just search for WordPress, and I'm going to go to verified, no Metasploit. So I'm not going to use Metasploit just so that I don't have to have extra stuff. But as you can see, there's a ton of WordPress vulnerabilities, and they're with plugins. So if I was like, so here, let's just go to our site real quick. So when it comes to, I don't know if you guys have done your own sites, but obviously this looks super ugly and basic. You can install all types of plugins to make it look prettier and prettier and prettier and do things, right? So when you install these plugins, this is kind of, WordPress itself is going to have vulnerabilities, of course, but these plugins are developed by tons and tons of random people out there. So the chances of there being an insecure plugin is many times higher than anything else. And that goes for any web software that you have out there, Joomla or Django or whatever else is out there at this point. So you just have to be aware when you install these plugins, make sure you're constantly updating and whatnot, right? But let's just say, for sake of this example, we happen to install this survey and poll plugin. Now, basically when we had a plugin in WordPress, we would just search for it here, survey and poll. And let's see, survey and poll. So this is the plugin right here. It doesn't get the greatest reviews, but hey, let's just say for whatever reason we really wanted to use this plugin, we would just install this plugin and have at it. Now, it has been updated, so if you can see version 1.5, whereas the, let's see, 1573, let's see which version it is. Yeah, 1589, so it has been patched, most likely, so I'm just going to download the bad one. Obviously, don't ever do this on a production or anything like that. You would never do that, of course, but let's go ahead and upload the vulnerable plugin just so that we can see the deal. Oh, shoot. Okay, so another thing is, and this kind of goes into the various issues with these types of how-tos, is there's going to be 1,000,001 issues, and unfortunately it's hard to always know exactly what it is. It's just going to take trying and banging your head against the wall to figure out what issues you might find. So I want to say, and I did this a bit ago, or yesterday, let's see, so find name the content. Basically, when you get this error like this, WordPress, it's trying to write to itself to update the plugins that are on the server, and if it doesn't have the right permissions, it'll give you this and say, hey, well, how do you want me to upload this, is basically what that means. So it doesn't have the right permissions because the user of the particular folder is not the web user or the Apache user, basically. So I'm going to change owner cursively, what is it, shoot, I can't remember. Let's just do www.data, that's what it is. Okay. www.data. Oh, shoot. And then we'll do change group www. Alright, now if I do that again, it should work. Alright. So it's installed, activated, and now we have our little smart Google Analytics thing. So just to briefly explain that, a lot of people actually use these types of things because we want to track the users that go to our site, right? So you put this little code in here and it talks to Google Analytics. Google Analytics then can give you all this information about who's visiting your sites for ads and marketing and crap like that, right? But what this basically is you're installing code on every single one of your pages to go talk back to Google. So obviously if that code was malicious, that's a great place to look and do things, right? So let's just go to this real quick. So for example, this is going to be a tracking code that Google would use to track your site, and you would paste that in there. It would be a little JavaScript that talks back to Google using your key. Well, if I wanted to, I can put anything in here and it would run on every single page, right? So for example, I want to say, I don't know, JavaScript. I remember this part, I think. Let's see. So if I wanted to do alert and I reloaded this page, is that an alert? JavaScript alert. Okay. Yeah, I think so. Maybe I have to have that. Let's just save that and see what happens. The site looks so kind of ugly that it's not really. It's not working. Don't know why. It's not working. But so let's just save something for now, just so maybe so let's just go to this exploit real quick, so we can see what's going on here. So first of all, these exploits, they're written by all types of random people, so it's not always going to be easy to understand, but if you really just go through and try them, sometimes it'll start to make sense. So let's see. Oh, why does this look like it's a different? Oh, oops. SQL injection. Maybe I wanted to do a different one. Oh, yeah, I wanted to do a different one. I wanted to use this guy. Yeah, so I didn't fully test that other one out. So let's just use this one. Here's another code inserter, funny enough. And so I'm gonna kill install plugins. I'm gonna deactivate that one. And I'm going to install this one instead. Upload, choose file. Oh, that is. Oh, that was the right one. I am tripping. Yeah, I'm tripping. Alright, so let's activate that again. And let's just go ahead and try and see here. So see how basically this vulnerability is, again, it's going to insert into that area that I was talking about. Essentially, it's going to do it by bypassing or using a function that they didn't properly protect, and all you have to do is call that function. And so you can call it using any post method. Curl just happens to be a way that we can, do that manual post method. So let's just put up a text file here. I already got it. I already have it there. Alright, so I copied that out. So if I wanted to, if we look at this code right now, see the box is empty. If any user, let me kill Wireshark. If any user runs this particular code with no permissions whatsoever, they can write to the database. So for example, now if I hit reload, oh, that's why I didn't put the script tags. If I reload that, as you can see, this alert popped in there. Now, let's just delete this real quick, save it, And I'm going to log out of this site. Log out. Oh, Jesus. Alright, so I'm logged out. So, can't get to that page. This is the regular page, but I shouldn't be able to edit anything. As you can see, there's no edits or anything. Now, no pop-ups are popping up, right? Now, if I run this exploit, which can be run from anyone in the world who can touch this site, right? They now have inserted this alert code into my site. So if I go to another page, boom, this is the alert that pops up. And then I continue on. Now, obviously, an alert is super, super basic, and that doesn't really do much of anything. But because it's JavaScript that runs on anybody's computer, we can do anything. We could do a what do you call it? Like a key logging thing. Like we could just have it running in the background, capturing your keys on the site when you try and do things. We could have it do all types of stuff. We could do a denial of service, for example. Like you see how that alert popped up. You know how those crazy sites will have popped up and pop-ups all the time. Well, we could do something similar, just because we have access to code that runs on every page. So, for example, let's see. I'm pretty sure I already wrote it, but if we just change our little alert code to be, let's say, instead of alert, we'll do x equals 1, and then we'll do while x equals 1 alert. Alright, so if I just run that, now I've pasted that into there. So if I reload this page, I guess I didn't do something right there. Let's go and let's log in real quick and see if script x equals 1 while x equals 1. So that should work. Unless I'm messing up on my while statement. Let me just log into this thing real quick and just see what we have, just to make sure. Script x equals 1 while x equals 1 alert. Oh, okay. So let's just kill this. Try again. Basically, I didn't put, for some reason, the quotes didn't save. I guess there's like an escape for quotes, which I'm not even going to try and know because I'm not a JavaScript person, so I'm just going to do that for now. You guys are going to laugh, but whatever. Alright, so if we paste this in, instead of saying hack, I just put a number 1 there. Now let's go to our site, and now it won't even let me do anything because it's basically a stuck while loop that is going forever, because I said while x equals 1, do this, and x will always be 1. So it's literally just going to keep going. So literally I could denial of service the site just by having access to some JavaScript on a page, which of course there's a lot of JavaScript hacks out there. So there you go. That's kind of the deal. So we've gone through, did a quick hack. We stood up a server, did a quick hack. When we talk about vulnerability, the vulnerability is that obviously there's a weakness in your plugin. The plugin didn't properly protect one of their functions, and that function was available to the public. If we say, what's the threat? Well, the threat is all of these things that I just did. Is you can log into the account, you can do things, you can run SQL statements, you can do a denial of service, you can do key logging. So like the possibilities are endless. So that would generally be a very severe weakness, in my opinion. And so if you get into what is the likelihood of somebody doing that? Well, it depends on where your stuff is hosted. Is it like, what's the likelihood of somebody hacking this? Well, if I'm the only one who can access the server by IP, well then somebody would have to be here physically to do that, or somehow have another vector in that they've already compromised. So that would make it less of a possibility. But as far as what the impact is, again, if it's just a test network, it doesn't really matter, low impact. But if this is actually your production site, well, obviously that would be a pretty high impact, potentially. And so you have to, when you're doing these whole security stuff, it's all based on your own system's exposure and what your data is worth and what your systems are worth. And what type of information is in there. So we're going to get into that when we get into the RMF stuff, but for now, just know that that's how easy it is to hack things. There's 1,000,001 hacks on ExploitDB, and anybody can find them and do them, and this is the stuff that's out there. There's tons of 0 days, there's tons of stuff that nobody is documenting that is actually still very vulnerable. And so last thing is just from a security control perspective, we talked about security controls very briefly, that you want to put things in place. Obviously, first thing to put in place is HTTPS. That would not have protected against this particular vulnerability though, but it would have protected from someone seeing our password, for example. The next thing, of course, would be patch your stuff. Since this is no longer vulnerable, this was back in 2017, you can patch your stuff. That's obviously things that you have to do. Those are security controls, things that you have to do. A lot of times you'll see them divided into administrative controls and technical controls and physical controls, and you can kind of use that as a general framework. Administrative controls being any processes, any procedures, any operational things that you're just constantly doing. So a lot of people would probably put patching into an administrative control. And then there would be the technical controls, like if I want to put up a firewall, if I need to actually put a permission on that particular function call, or a protection on that particular function, or change that would be more of a technical control. And then obviously physical is physical, like if you have to have access to my actual computer and stuff like that. But that's the basics, and how you can kind of see a hack and apply it to CIA, Triad, risk, and security controls. That is all I have. That took a lot longer than I expected, but yeah, that is it. So, if you have any questions, comments, of course, put them down below. Again, I don't expect many people to be on here for quite a while, but hey, we'll see how it goes. And remember to, if you want to talk about anything, just send me a note, book an appointment, whatever. Talk about RMF and any of these things if you have issues in your job or career or something like that. Okay, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.